Instructional design, maybe. Maybe you've even used it yourself. Today, I want to make the case for a different term. And I want to be clear, this isn't just branding. It changes how I, and hopefully you, actually build. Welcome back to Learning Experience Design for Changemakers. I'm Renee Koster, Learning Experience Designer and Strategist. Today is a definition episode. I want to answer a question that I get asked in some form almost every week. What exactly is a learning experience? And if someone has maybe heard of it before, isn't that just instructional design with a fancier name? By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear, simple definition you can actually use, and you'll understand why the term itself reflects a real difference in how you design, not just a different word for the same thing. So let's start at the start. If you're not in the academic or corporate learning and development world, you may not have run into the term learning experience much at all. And you may not have heard instructional design either, although that one's a bit more familiar. So, when you hear learning experience, you can probably guess it has something to do with learning. Yes, but what exactly? Here is the simple definition. A learning experience is anything, any moment someone learns something and it was designed with intention instead of left to chance. That's it. That is the core of it. Notice what's doing the work, though, in that sentence designed with intention. Learning happens around us constantly, whether or not anyone planned for it. A learning experience is what you get when someone takes that moment and shapes it on purpose toward an outcome. So, if that's the definition, here's the next question. Why do I use learning experience instead of instructional design when there is so much overlap between the two? And when I first entered the space, I knew it as instructional design. That's actually the term my husband used when he suggested this field to me because of my background and because he had worked with instructional designers before. For me, it comes down to a core belief I hold about how people learn. All experiences are learning, and learning is an active process. It cannot be passive. Think about what the word instruction tends to imply, and this is how I feel about it. You may disagree. For me, it implies being handed a manual, sitting through a lecture. Those feel very passive to me. Someone tells you the information, and it is your job to receive it. Now, there's nothing wrong with instruction. It absolutely has its place, but it does lean passive. It puts the content in the driver's seat. For me, an experience flips that. It puts the person in the driver's seat. When I say learning experience, I'm emphasizing that the person is experiencing something. They're active in it, not just receiving end of it. Let me give you an example. Say you're in medical school and you are receiving all of this information about a particular ailment, a particular disease, and how you are sitting in a lecture on how to diagnose it. To me, that is instruction. But what if the professor flipped that a little bit and gave you a case study and said, here's this person's medical records. Now you tell me. That is the difference for me. That is the difference between instruction and a learning experience. In the case where the students are looking at information, a case study, even though it's fictitious, and then they're trying to puzzle it out themselves, having to puzzle it out is an active way of learning, and having to actively engage with the material increases the ability to remember, increases the ability to recall, and absolutely increases the ability to understand and then apply later on. So, the distinction between learning experience and instructional design is not small. It does change what you design. Instead of asking, what do I need to tell them? You start asking yourself, what do I need them to do, encounter, work through? That one shift from telling to doing is most of what separates a learning experience from a stack of content. So here's where we're going to get even more practical. A learning experience is not just a course. It's not just a membership or a program. That's the mistake I see most often. People think learning experience design only applies once they're building a full out curriculum. It's much bigger than that. And this is where I get excited. A podcast is a learning experience. In fact, this show you're listening to right now is a learning experience. I'm designing each episode with a specific outcome in mind. I'm not just trying to talk at you. Also, a YouTube video can be a learning experience. A LinkedIn article can be a learning experience. And if you are a coach, every time you explain something to a client one-on-one, that's a learning experience too, whether you've ever called it out as that or not. And speaking of podcasts, I want to give a huge shout out to Kim Parkinson. She recently released an episode on her podcast, Podcasting for Your Spiritual Business. It's episode 65. And she shared an absolutely brilliant framework on how to create a podcast episode that has a transformation for your listeners. So, absolutely check it out. The point is this: if you're already creating content, coaching clients, or running programs, you are already in the business of designing learning experiences. You just may have never called it that. So, where does someone like me come in? Learning experience designers work with subject matter experts. And if you're listening to the show, that is you. You are the one with the expertise, the knowledge, the lived experience, the results with your clients. My job is not to replace that, it's to help shape it. I love co-designing with subject matter experts because I learn so much in return. And for me, it is imperative for those subject matter experts to be involved in the actual design. So you have two paths here. Most of the time, you'll design your own learning experiences, and that's completely valid. A lot of what this show exists to do is to give you the framework to do that well. But sometimes you're going to want a second set of eyes, someone who can look at what you've built, see where the structure is working against you, and help you realign it without starting over. That's really the heart of this show. It's not about building from scratch. It's about taking what you already have, your content, your program, your coaching. If you're museums, it's, your artifacts, it's your staff members who have their own expertise, and making sure it's actually designed to land. So let's bring it back to that question. What is a learning experience anyway? It's any moment someone learns something designed with intention instead of left to chance. It's active, not passive, which is exactly why I use experience instead of instruction. And it shows up everywhere, not just in courses, but in podcasts, videos, articles, every conversation you have with a client. And if you need a more concrete example, go back to episode 2, where I talk about the learning experience we had at the Philadelphia Zoo. And if this is landing for you and you're looking at something you've already built, wondering if it's structured the way it should be, that's exactly the kind of help I provide in my newsletter. Get on the list at reneekoster.com/newsletter and you can reply to anything I send you. I read everything. Next time, we're moving from theory to methodology with backwards design, the approach that changed how I think about design and shaped my framework, the Roots to Canopy method. So I'll see you then.